How's it going? So, on February 5th of 2020, I had a vision from God, and since then, I've really been struggling to express it and to put it into words. And I understand that I'm never going to be able to fully articulate it the way that I want to and the way that I saw it myself. But I feel like it's an obligation and a blessing and a privilege to try to share it with everybody that I can in its rawest form that I can. And I've tried to derive the meaning from what I saw and the meaning in my own life, but I wanted to share it blatantly in the purest form that I could. And so that's what I did, and I wrote it down, and I'm going to read it to everybody, and that way everybody can hear it. So this is what I wrote down here, and I'm just going to read it. So earlier that day, I was listening to a song called Rose's Remix on repeat, again and again. I was thinking of the power of God and embracing it and letting it into my heart. I dropped my dad off in Mexico that day, and I've always been a little afraid of Mexico. But that day, I got something to eat by the border, and I remember letting God into my heart and trusting in Him more. Driving home, I kept listening to the same song on repeat, and I saw some familiar scenery I think I might have saw in a dream, although I can't say for certain. I kept thinking about God's power and glory, and then visions of His nature would come into my mind and my heart, and I would have to pull over and I would tear up and cry. So I was driving home that day, and I kept feeling like God was trying to tell me something. And I would say to myself, is this really happening? I'd pull over, I'd say, are you trying to tell me something, God? And I would drive a little bit more, and it would come to me again, and I would try to open my heart up to Him and say, what are you trying to tell me, God? I want to know. I asked God if He wanted to tell me something, and I got back on the road and continued driving. I would continue driving, and I would try to open my heart up to God and would see visions again, like dreaming in my head and my heart, while consciously and still being aware of what's going on in front of me. So one way that I can describe what I saw in my mind was it was like having a dream while being awake, like a very vivid dream while consciously being awake and seeing what's going on around me with my physical eyes. I feel like I wasn't seeing anything exact, but what I was seeing was a glimpse of God's essence. I would experience aspects of God's nature, and I would experience the presence of Him being who He is. The best way to describe it is that here in this physical realm, we see the physical body, but if you were to think of who someone is to you, their heart, their emotions, their intentions, that would be their true essence. And that's what I was seeing of God. So it's not like I was seeing God's face. It's like if you were to see me, but nothing to do, like if someone who knew me very well was close their eyes and think about who I am to them, my presence, my essence, my hopes, my dreams, my emotions, my character, everything that I am. It was like being in a place where that was as real as the physical body. It's like being able to see that, see someone's heart. It's like that's the place that this was in. It's like if I could stand right next to you and you could see inside of me. It was like that's what I was seeing of God. And I was experiencing His presence, and I was seeing Him for who He is. It's like my vision was taking place in the realm of the heart, where things weren't disguised by the physical, but you were seeing them for what they truly are. I felt the presence of him being my creator. Although I wasn't shown how he created me or why, but I truly felt the presence of him being my creator. It was like, I felt the presence of him being my creator. Like, I truly felt that. It was almost like presence, and it was like almost like a tangible thing. At first, it was the feeling of him being my creator. Then what felt like after that was like shaking, like almost like an earthquake feeling. I felt I felt it to my core and in all the things around me. And it was like a veil being torn and shaking throughout every particle of reality, and the presence of God shaking existence by the unveiling of himself. So I was just still driving at this point, and I was seeing the physical road in front of me, I was seeing everything. But in my heart and my mind, I just felt God's presence. And I felt like I saw a veil being torn in my heart, where all of creation, every atom, this whole entire was being shaken and trembling by his essence and his presence. Like if God just tore this veil open all of a sudden of this physical realm and then revealed himself. And it was like every atom, every aspect of reality was reconfigured and torn apart and shaken, is exactly what that was like. I then began to see what looked like a throne of light encompassing my consciousness. And in the middle I felt God's presence, although I could not look up at him directly for fear of his glory. Now, I use the word fear a little bit here and there, and for a while I would think of that word and I would have trouble using it because it seems like a negative word. And I had trouble with that for a while until I saw a verse in the book of Psalms that says, rejoice in the Lord your God and rejoice in fear and trembling. It's something like that. And it was hard for me because it wasn't a negative emotion. It was a positive emotion. He was so much. He was so big. He was every positive and good thing that ever existed, but it was overwhelming, and that it was it was like amazement, but it was so much that made me feel so humbled in his presence that it was terrifying in a way. But it's hard to describe it because it was terrifying in an absolutely positive and rejoicing and amazing and fulfilling way. It was like, it was amazing. It wasn't a negative fear, it was a positive fear, which is hard to describe. I felt his spirit emanating truth and glory and light and power. It's like, imagine a place where truth and glory and light and power were physical things that you could see, just like we see the physical world here. It's like, I feel like on the other side, it's not so much, whether you like, we exist in the plane of the physical, and we tune into the plane of our hearts and our souls. But I believe that there's a place where what goes on in here is as real and as tangible as what we call physical here on earth. And it's like seeing God, it's not like trusting God whether he's true or not. You just see him. He's truth. And you see that truth is coming from his being. And there's no questioning it. It is truth. It's like you can reach out and touch it. You know what I mean? It's not like here where truth is something that's kind of like, can't see it. Truth is like an ethereal thing to us. But there's a place, I believe, where truth is something that you can see and touch. And that I was seeing God's truth. I was feeling the essence of his presence. And his presence was truth. It was light. It was all these things. I felt the absolute essence of his power, the fear of knowing he created all things. Again, that's not a negative fear, that's a positive fear. It's something that is amazement. It was, imagine amazement that it was infinite, an amazement and wonder that you had that was infinite, that was so overwhelming, it was so big, it was so vast that it was fearful to you, but it was positive. I felt things in my life and this world that are excuses for what we know to be true in our hearts. It would be like trying to lift your head up to tell a lie and being blinded by his truth and light, and all that would come out is, "I'm sorry, please forgive me." So I saw what looked like a throne room, and it wasn't, it was like seeing it in a dream. It wasn't like seeing it in a physical sense. It was like I was seeing it in my heart. And I felt like I could see like shimmering light and being in the presence of God. And it would be like anything that you had that was a lie, that you were harboring, or any sort of untruth, it would be like trying to lift your head up to say it and being instantly blinded by light and only getting about this high and not being able to finish your sentence, and all that would come out is that you're sorry. And not come out of force, but out of your own free will, that God's glory will tug on your own emotions and your own soul and evoke what you long for out of yourself, which is truth, which is light, which is glory. We can deny what we truly desire, but at the end of the day, we were made in light, and we desire God's light, and we desire truth and glory. And in his presence, we see how beautiful that is. And so anything that is evil inside of us comes out because we want so badly to feel his presence and to feel his glory and to feel his light. So, continuing. I felt like I was being judged by the truth in my heart and for accepting anything else in its place. And I could hear him saying, not in words, but in my mind and my heart, you knew. So I felt like a lot of times in life, we get caught up with knowledge and words and numbers and math and books and reading and blah, 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 blah. But in God's presence, all that matters is the realness in your heart. See, I think that we know everything that is true and that matters and that is the way things are supposed to be. We know all of that in our heart. And we come up with all sorts of riddles in life, and sometimes our mind overtakes our heart. And in God's presence, we're being judged on that inner knowing, on that truth that we had in our heart, and for accepting anything else in its place. And so that's what I felt like we were being judged on. Not, whether or not, I was able to add something up or this, that, or the other, but that inner knowing, that truth that we all have inside of us in our heart is what I felt like we were being judged on. It wasn't that I felt like I was necessarily being judged directly in that moment. It was just like experiencing what it would be like. I felt like I could see other thoughts and opinions that weren't my own being judged as well, almost like experiencing what it would be like to be anyone in that position. And I felt there was no denying his truth because I saw that he was truth, and any lie made to seem as truth could not be so in his presence. I then saw him unveiling his presence to all of creation like a slow cascade of light, but in that light was the essence of his presence. I saw how nothing could be in the presence of its creator and not admit its own sin. So I then saw like a day or a time where God started to unveil his spirit to creation. And we're here and we're totally connected to God. God is all around us, but we are not in the direct fullness of his presence. In the direct, he's here, but he's gently here with us, He's not, we're not here in his direct presence, He's still here, but it's not in his direct presence. I saw how there's going to be a day when God unveils his spirit in its fullness to all of creation. And when I felt like I was seeing the throne room of God, I saw that nothing, no creation can stand in the midst of its creator and deny its own sin. Because I've always known God created me, but feeling that tangible essence of him being my creator, nothing can stand in the midst of its creator, because that essence, that presence of him truly being your creator is so humbling. Nothing can deny its own sin in his presence. Not Satan, not the devil, not demons or angels or anything can deny its own sin in the presence of God. And again, not by force, but by its own free will. We do have free will, but we don't have free will to lift a 10,000-pound rock above our head. And although some of us have darkness in us, we have things that are lies, we're not strong enough to carry those lies in the presence of God. Our whatever darkness we have is not strong enough to stand in his light. Because what does light do? Light destroys darkness. And God's light is so powerful that when he shines it on all of creation, there will be no more darkness. I saw some things running away and some things turning and bowing, although the encompassing of all things was inevitable. At this point, I was nearing the Del Mar Fairgrounds exit, and I took it and pulled over and cried in a parking lot. I was continuing to feel God's presence. So I felt like when I saw that day when God unveils his spirit, some things would be running and turning away, although it was like a cascade of light, and it was coming throughout all creation. There was no escaping it. Some things would turn away and then they'd be engulfed, And I saw how some things were turning and submitting and bowing, and other things were trying to run away, and then there was no escape. They were getting encompassed. His glory, everything, his light was being shown on all of creation. And I was continuing to see God's presence and power in my heart and was crying and wailing. I drove to another location in Encinitas because I wanted to be secluded away from people so I could cry in peace and embrace what God was showing me. I was by the beach and I saw all life, not just atoms and protons and material things, but what looked like the essence of different animals. It would be like a million different things running out, and I would see the essence of many different animals and life itself raining out from God's Spirit. I realized that reality, life, and existence itself rest on his being. It looked like shards of light containing the essence of different animals, although there were things that looked like golden light and clusters of shimmering things containing the essence of different animals, all raining out from his spirit like a fountain of life. So what I saw at this point was light and essences of beings and things and animals all raining out from God's spirit. Like his spirit was a fountain of life, and I could see all life, and not animals in their physical sense, but the essence of what I think of in my heart when I think of different things raining out from his spirit. I saw his spirit itself. That's who he is. His spirit was raining out life, creation, existence, raining out from his spirit, and what it looked like clusters of light representing different emotions of animals that I would think of in my heart when I thought of something. You know what I mean? I saw then the physical beach with my own two eyes, and I could see in my heart and my mind his eternal spirit raining out the beach in front of me and supporting all things. I felt like I could see in my heart him slowly guiding all of creation and revealing his presence to creation through experience. So I feel like God is slowly unveiling his spirit to us through life and experience. And what I mean by that is, although God is a being, he's a conscious entity, he also is everything that is good and true and life and existence and all these sort of things. And so you go through your life and you live 100 years and you learn to love God. You learn to love him as a conscious being, and you also learn to love his essence, who he is. So you go through life and you make mistakes, and maybe you do something that's wrong or something that's right, and you learn to love good, and you learn to love righteousness, and you learn to embrace God through experience. And that's what he's doing, is guiding all of us to the acceptance of his will and his essence through the experience of life and creation. I feel like God is slowly revealing himself to us at our own pace through experience and life, but that one day he will unveil his spirit to all of creation, and all things will be forced of their own free will to repent and submit to his glory. So like I said earlier, being in the presence of God, nothing can deny its own sin. Of their own free will, they can't deny their own sin. So I feel like God, one time I thought to myself, if God is light and love and glory and everything that's true, and love and all these sort of things, why couldn't he just show us that for a split second, and then we could live the rest the rest of time knowing that? And that's what this life is. I feel like this life is that brief second where God teaches us who he is, and we learn to love God for who he is, and we're shown his love for us. And then after that, we take this lesson with us into eternity. And I feel like there's going to be a day when God unveils his spirit to all of creation, and everything is forced to submit of its own free will, and there will be no more death or sorrow, and Satan, the devil, anyone who's done anything bad will see in their own heart and feel true remorse, and everything will be absorbed back into the light and love of God, and it will be the restoration of all things, and all creation will complete its cycle of learning to love God and accept his essence, and then everything will be restored back to perfection. And I had a friend tell me one time, it's disrespectful to God to think that he doesn't have a plan that works out for the greater good of all creation. And I believe that because God is all good, all loving, all knowing, and all powerful. So the only reason God would ever let anything bad happen is if he could use it for good. And hell isn't a punishment of God. Hell is a self-inflicted or inflicted on you by other beings, emotion or experience or whatever it is. So God isn't punishing us. He's letting us exercise our own free will and using it as a refining tool to get us to come to love him and love his essence and love who he is, not only as a being, but also love him because he is light, he is glory, he is love, he is all these things. You know, that's who God is, and that's what this life is about learning that and learning to love him for who he is. So my vision probably took place, if I could guess, over a 2-hour period. And I've hesitated a lot to share all this with people because I'll never have enough words or be perfect or be able to explain what I saw in a perfect way. There will always be some sort of flaw or something in what I said, and it will never be exact. I will never be able to exactly fully express what I saw because words aren't enough. But yeah, for the most part, and thought to the best of my ability, That's what I saw, and I hope that it's a blessing to you guys, and it's been a blessing to me, and it's helped me make sense of a lot of things in life. So that was my vision.